On a grey morning in April 2002, a crown moved slowly through the streets of London for the very last time. It rested on the lid of a coffin on a cushion of purple velvet, a band of pure platinum set with almost 3,000 diamonds catching what little light there was. Most of the people who lined the pavements that morning had never seen it before. Very few living people ever had. For close to half a century it had sat in the dark, behind glass and iron, in the jewel house at the Tower of London. It had been made for one woman, made for her, and worn by no one else, before or since. And yet, for the last 50 years of her very long life, she had scarcely worn it at all. She had not lost her title. She had not lost her place. She remained Her Majesty, ranked second only to the Queen herself, with her own household and her own household's loyalty. She wanted for nothing. And still, the single most magnificent object ever made for her spent 50 years locked away, while she chose, evening after evening, year after year, to wear something else entirely. This is the story of two crowns, the one that was made for Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and for her alone, and the one she wore instead for the rest of her life, right up until the very end. The Crown Made for a Queen, 1937. To understand the first crown, we have to go back to a coronation that was never supposed to happen. In December 1936, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's husband became King George VI, not by ambition, but by his brother's abdication. Almost overnight, a shy, stammering younger son was to be crowned, and his wife with him. She would be queen consort at his side, sharing the weight of it. For that coronation, in May 1937, the crown jeweller, Garrard, made her a crown of her own. It was and remains unlike any other in the royal collection. Every British crown of its kind is built on a frame of gold. Hers alone was built of pure platinum, the only pure platinum crown ever made for a British king or queen. Into that cool, silvery frame were set some 2,800 diamonds, most of them lifted from an older circlet of Queen Victoria's. At the very front, in a cross at the brow, sat one of the most famous diamonds on earth, the Koh-i-Noor. Its long and disputed history is a story for another day. What matters here is simpler. This crown was made to mark a single moment, the day a consort was crowned beside her king. There is one more detail to hold on to, because it will matter later. The arches of the crown, the high curved bands that meet at the top, were designed to lift off. With them, the crown stood tall and closed, the mark of the highest rank. Without them, it became a low, flat circlet. The same object could speak in two different registers. Remember that. And remember this too. Elizabeth would turn out to be the last queen consort in modern history to have a crown made expressly for her. Every consort crowned after her would be given one that already existed. Hers was the last of its kind, bespoke, personal, and made for one head only. For 15 years, that was exactly what the crown meant. Elizabeth wore it as consort, at the state opening of Parliament, at great occasions of the reign, always beside the king. Then, on the 6th of February 1952, the king died in his sleep at Sandringham. He was 56. His health had been failing, but the end still came quietly in the night. Elizabeth was there. She was 51 years old, and after nearly 3 decades of marriage, she was suddenly a widow. Their elder daughter was thousands of miles away in Kenya at the start of a Commonwealth tour, and in the instant of her father's death, without ceremony, without a crown yet on her head, that daughter became Queen Elizabeth II. The crown passes in the same breath as the last one falls. There is no gap, which left a delicate question, one the history books rarely pause on. The older Elizabeth had never been queen in her own right. She had been the wife of a king. So when the king was gone and her own child was now the sovereign, what exactly was she? The answer was a title tailored to fit an unusual life. She became a queen dowager, the widow of a king, and she began to be styled within weeks as Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. It was a form of words designed to do several things at once: to keep her rank, to honour her as the sovereign's mother, and to avoid the confusion of two Queen Elizabeths at the same court. She was the first to carry it consistently as an official style. But a title could not disguise what had changed. She moved out of Buckingham Palace, the very centre of the monarchy, and made her home at Clarence House. The old court, the court of George VI, was over, and a crown made for a consort has no obvious purpose once there is no longer a king to stand beside. By most serious accounts, she withdrew for a time. The pace of her public life slowed to almost nothing. She grieved quietly, largely in Scotland, out of the public eye. For a while, it was not at all clear that she would return. The woman who had refused to leave London while the bombs fell in the Blitz, who had walked through the wreckage of shattered streets to stand beside her people, that woman now seemed to fold quietly out of sight. She was barely past 50. She might have chosen to disappear into a dignified private old age, and no one would have blamed her. The question was what she would do next. The answer began to take shape in a single, extraordinary year, 1953, the year her daughter was crowned. At that coronation, the Queen Mother wore her platinum crown in public one last significant time. But look closely at how she wore it. The arches were gone. She wore it low and flat as a circlet, the quieter of the two registers we spoke about earlier. In 1937, she had worn it tall and closed, at the height of her own coronation. Now, 16 years later, she wore the very same crown stripped down to its humbler form, seated in the Abbey, watching her daughter take the sovereign's place. And there was a second, quieter handover happening in the same Abbey. The great diamond coronation necklace, the historic stones Elizabeth had worn at her own crowning in 1937, now framed the face of the new queen. The same diamonds, a different woman, and this time they belonged to the one who actually held the throne. If you wanted a single image of power passing from mother to daughter, it was there in the jewels themselves. After that day, the platinum crown went back to the Tower of London, and there, in the Jewel House, it essentially stayed. For the next half-century, it would sit among the regalia, looked at by tourists, worn by no one. But here is the turn the title promised you. In that very same year, 1953, the Queen Mother quietly sent a different tiara away to be reset, remodelled into the form she would wear again and again for the rest of her life. As one crown went into the dark, another was being made ready for the light. And the difference between those two jewels is the whole story. The jewel she chose was a tiara of diamonds set in a distinctive honeycomb lattice, today usually called the Greville tiara. Its story is not a royal one at all, and that is the point. It had been made in Paris by the House of Boucheron in 1921, not for a queen, but for a formidable society hostess named Dame Margaret Greville. Mrs. Greville had no children, and when she died in 1942, in the middle of the war, she left the whole of her remarkable jewel collection to Elizabeth, then still Queen Consort, famously, in her will, to be worn by queens. Think for a moment about how unusual that was. A private citizen, a brewer's daughter who had made herself one of the most celebrated hostesses of her age, had left a future queen an entire fortune in gems, on the single glittering condition that queens should wear them. It gave Elizabeth something rare and quietly powerful, a treasury of great jewels that owed nothing whatsoever to the state. Because these were not crown jewels. They were not held in trust for the nation. They were private property, hers personally, to keep and to leave as she wished, and no succession could ever reclaim them. And after she had the honeycomb tiara reset in 1953, it became one of the signature pieces of her widowhood. Through decades of state banquets and grand evenings, across the 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s, it is the Greville tiara you see again and again on her head. Now set the two jewels beside each other and the meaning comes clear. The platinum crown was magnificent, but it was never truly hers. It was the property of the crown, of the institution, made for a role. When the role ended, the crown returned to the institution and stayed there. The honeycomb tiara was different. It was her own. It answered to no coronation, no constitution, no succession. She could wear it whenever she pleased for the simple reason that it belonged to her and to no one else. She did keep some of the old grandeur. One dazzling ruby and diamond heirloom of Queen Victoria's, the Oriental circlet, was quietly left in her keeping on long-term loan so that she never lacked for something regal on a great evening. But the emblem of these years was not the borrowed heirloom, and it certainly was not the crown in the tower. It was the private jewel that was hers alone. That tiara would outlive her too. In time it passed to the present Queen, Camilla, who wears it still, carrying a hostess's Edwardian gift across 3 generations of royal women. And what life did she wear it into? The most telling clue lies at the very top of Scotland, on the wild Caithness coast, in a castle she found in the same terrible year she lost her husband. In 1952, grieving, staying with friends near the northern shore, she came across a semi-derelict castle, then called Barragill, battered by the sea wind, only partly habitable. She bought it. She restored its old name, Castle of May, and set about bringing it back to life. The house, the gardens, 30 acres of grounds, weather-tight and blooming again over the following years. Later, she took on the neighbouring farm as well. It became the rhythm of her later life. 3 weeks every August, around 10 days every October. There she fished the northern rivers. She was, by the official account, a keen and expert fisherwoman, tended the gardens, kept an eye on the farm, and lived for a few weeks a year, almost like a private countrywoman. Not an exile, a chosen retreat, returned to like clockwork, year after year, for half a century. The rest of the calendar filled just as deliberately. She became one of the great racing enthusiasts of her age, an owner of steeplechasers, among them a horse called Devon Loch, whose sudden, mysterious collapse within sight of victory in the 1956 Grand National became one of the most famous heartbreaks in the sport. And beyond the racecourse and the castle stretched an enormous web of public duty. In her widowhood, she made more than 40 official visits overseas and served as patron or president of some 350 organisations: the Red Cross, nursing services, regiments, women's services, charities without number. And these were not merely names on a list. Honorary though many of the roles were, they meant speeches to give, letters to answer, hospitals and parades and prize-givings to attend, uniforms to be worn with care. It amounted to a second working life, assembled piece by piece out of the causes she chose to lend her name to, the structure that gave shape to decades that might otherwise have drifted. This is why the simple word retirement does not fit her at all. She had stepped out of the daily machinery of monarchy, the state papers, the constitutional weight, the centre of the ceremonial stage. But she had not stepped out of public life. She had rebalanced it. Historians who know the record best tend to reject the word reinvention and reach instead for a gentler, truer phrase: adaptation within continuity. The crown stayed in the tower. The life happened in the open air. So did she step aside. It is worth being honest about both sides of the ledger. She lost a great deal. She lost the partner of nearly 30 years. She lost her place at the very centre of the court. The state visits, the Commonwealth tours, the constitutional occasions all now belong to her daughter and to Prince Philip, the new consort. She lost Buckingham Palace itself. But look at what she kept. She remained Her Majesty. In the strict order of precedence, she stood immediately behind the sovereign, ahead of every other woman in the realm. She kept a substantial household of her own, a home of her own, and jewels of her own. And she gained something a reigning queen never has, a measure of freedom to shape her own days. There is a tempting version of this story, the bitter dowager, the ex-queen clinging to a lost throne, working her influence in the shadows. It makes for good drama. It simply is not supported by the serious record. The careful biographies find a woman who advised where a mother might, who held firm views on the family's dignity, but who broadly respected the line she could not cross. She was never the sovereign. She never pretended to be. What the evidence actually shows is quieter and, in its way, more impressive. A woman who absorbed an enormous loss, withdrew, and then chose, gradually, deliberately, to build a second life of real substance around it. Her authority in those 50 years was never constitutional. It was emotional, symbolic, social. She became less the protagonist of the monarchy's official story and more the reassuring heart of the one the public told itself, the living link to the wartime years, the grandmother of the nation. She accepted the supporting role, and she made it entirely her own, much as she had chosen a tiara that was entirely her own. Her last winter came in 2002. In February, her younger daughter, Princess Margaret, died, a loss said to have grieved her deeply. Just 7 weeks later, on the 30th of March, the Queen Mother died peacefully at Royal Lodge, Windsor. She was 101 years old, and now the crown came out of the dark. After nearly 50 years in the Jewel House, it was taken up, and its arches, the ones she had removed in 1953, were restored to their full height, made whole again, made tall again. For the first time in half a century, the crown made for her alone was returned to the form of her own coronation. They set it on her coffin, and they carried her through streets lined with people who had come to say goodbye to the last of the wartime royals. 2 crowns, then, for one long life. One made for her by the nation, worn at the beginning, set aside, and brought back only at the very end, the bookends of her public duty. And between them, for 50 years, a jewel that was simply, quietly hers, worn to the banquets and the evenings and the ordinary grandeurs of a life she had chosen for herself. The crown, in the end, belonged to the crown. The life she built belonged to her. She had spent 50 years quietly proving something that is easy to forget, that a life need not stand at the center of everything to be a full one, that you can set a crown down and still somehow stand tall. If you find yourself drawn to the stories that outlive the people who wore them, the jewels that carry memory from one generation to the next, then stay with us here at Behind the Gift. There are a great many more of them still to tell.